Hello, welcome to the Eclectic Reader. Listen to great books and stories while you use your eyes and hands for other things. Now here's your host, Madison Mason.
Hi, Madison Mason here. We're so happy you're enjoying The Gray Quarry Boys. Here's Chapter 52. The Gray Quarry Boys, Chapter 52, Help. In the main auditorium, there was constant delight of one form or another. The first graders were depicting the discovery of Gray Quarry by Ernest G. Fleeman, forebear of Dr. Fleeman and his family, and the stalwart settlers who were befriended by the kind Indian. Little guys dressed as Cherokees were having a rough time standing still, and giggled in spite of Miss Prim's stern glares from the side of the stage. The starring kid who played Ernest G. Fleeman couldn't resist sliding a small pink finger up his nose, while Chief Ponchahawat was stumbling small-voiced over his forgotten line of welcome. "I peed in my pants," Mary Carney bawled bitterly. She was sobbing backstage at wetting herself while singing Ave Maria for the audience. Old Mrs. Went, the fifth-grade teacher and favorite of all the kids, bent over and dried Mary's eyes, holding the red face to her enormous bosom and clucking, "There, dear." The kids in Miss Burke's fourth grade stared at the yellow stains on the insides of Mary's white anklet socks and assembled for the square dance jamboree. The boys had put on straw hats and the girls all wore aprons and bonnets, which gave the whole affair a very authentic pioneer flavor, they felt. Mrs. Burke, more nervous than anyone there, lined her little dancers up in rows, and not too gently. Giggling boys were yanked around and put aright in short order, as the girls assembled obediently with natural grace. Ronnie had the uneasy feeling that he was overdressed in his jacket and tie and straw farmer's hat, but he didn't give it much thought. He was too busy gazing at Roxanne, who looked more beautiful to him than any movie star he had ever seen. Hair trickled down her cheeks from under the calico sunbonnet, and her bright red apron awakened a desire in a hero to build log cabins and plow the earth and return home to Roxanne's fresh-baked bread. He was glad he had dressed special for his date. Somehow he felt like she was his, and he liked it. His reverie was snapped by a sudden jostle from Mrs. Burke. Ronnie looked up to see a panic in her eyes he had never seen in this symbol of stern authority. She shoved her kids on stage as the first graders exited the other side, and suddenly there they were, lined up in rows before their parents, teachers, and other kids, and Mrs. Burke was dropping the needle on the record, and the square dance jamboree began. And just as suddenly, nobody remembered any of the steps. Kids wandered aimlessly, hoping someone would lead as recorded, "Do-si-do your partner," squawked from the PA system. Weeks of rehearsal went right out the window in the face of reality and stage fright. Nervous kids bumped and banged into each other, stomping all over toes, and it was just what the other kids in the audience were waiting for. They laughed and fell out of their seats, and even the parents had a hard time holding back. Mrs. Burke was vexed in the extreme. There was nothing she could do but wait for some order to descend on her clumsy little flock. Order, however, did not seem forthcoming. Ronnie was suddenly seized with an inspiration. He grabbed Roxanne and yelled, "Thread the needle!" as loud as he could. The kids responded with surprising organization, probably because threading the needle was one of their favorite moves, but also they had to form two lines, which they were very accustomed to doing, and it took the least creative thought. 40 sweaty little hands all joined in an arch, and Roxanne and Ronnie threaded the needle first, followed by everyone in return. The square dance jamboree carried on from there without a hitch, though nobody could hear the music at all. They finished with the great starburst maneuver and took their bows. The audience went wild. Kids jumped and applauded maniacally, stomping and whistling as proud parents beamed. Glory was short-lived, and they were hustled off the stage with little ado to make way for two fifth-grade girls who were performing a tap dance version of "Me and My Shadow," which they had already done last year in the fourth grade and hadn't improved with time. Out in the hall, Joey came running up to his brother. "Hey, you guys were terrible. That's the lamest show I ever saw. You really saved their butts, man. It was awful. Thanks a lot. So, is this here Roxanne?" Suddenly embarrassed, Ronnie didn't know what to say. He was afraid to introduce her. He could only mumble, "Yeah." Joey held out his hand. "Hey, I'm Joey." "I'm Roxanne." They shook hands awkwardly and pulled them back and looked away. Nobody knew what to say after that. Ronnie broke the ice. "You want to get some candy?" he asked Roxanne, who was blushing. She nodded yes quickly. "Well, see you, Joey." "Yeah, see ya." They wandered off down the hall and came to the candy booth where Richie Moss's mom was selling homemade turtles for a dime, or 3 for a quarter. She beamed happily. Ronnie bought 3 and gave Roxanne 2. She handed one back. "Here, you eat this." They headed farther down the hall, drawn magnetically to the sound of rock and roll blasting from the gym. The music was cacophonous. Kids of all sizes and shapes danced whatever steps they felt like. Mr. Mosley manned the turntable in the corner, playing 45 records. There were a lot of girls dancing with other girls, and just as many boys standing off to one side, too shy to dance or to say yes to a dance if some brave girl asked them. Several teachers were having a good time dancing with students and each other. It was very hot. "Come on, let's dance," Roxanne smiled, pulling Ronnie onto the floor. They shoved what was left of their turtles into their mouths and started to jitterbug. Roxanne was really good. She practiced a lot. After that came a slow dance, and Ronnie took Roxanne in his arms, not too close. He tried hard to remember his box step and not stomp on her feet. In the middle of the song, which was about being in love with someone and all that stuff, and wanting only them, Ronnie got up the nerve to dance cheek to cheek. The gym was dark, and the little lights from the mirror ball high overhead threw sprinkles of glittering starlight on the slow-moving dancers as they silently shifted over the floor. Ronnie could smell the sweet, soapy, clean scent of her cheek and her hair, and his heart sang. Mrs. Burke suddenly twirled by, guided expertly by Mr. Marcus, who seemed to really like this kind of music. Ronnie liked the feeling of Roxanne's wiry little form dancing close to his with her arm around him, and it made him feel very grown up, although he hoped his mom and Joey weren't watching. "Too close," sang Mr. Marcus, "arm's length," and twirled away. Ronnie and Roxanne adjusted fittingly, and when the lights came up, the jitterbug started again, and they danced with everything they had. After 3 numbers, Roxanne went with a couple of friends to the girls' room. Ronnie stood against the wall with Dickie Badham and waited. "Hey, Morton, you're really sweating," Dickie noted. "It's hot in here," Ronnie panted. Dickie wiped his hand on Ronnie's damp face and then on his best white shirt. "Gross!" he yelled and shoved Ronnie. "Cut it out, jerk!" Ronnie pushed back. It turned into a shoving match, and Ronnie was pushed against the crash bars on the gym doors. Fresh air rushed in and sucked him out of the lights of the gym into the cool night. The door slammed shut behind him, and he was alone on the stairs. It was darker than outer space. The music was now muffled, trapped inside. He descended the stairs to the schoolyard, and crisp air coursed all around his steaming body. He could see nothing, not even the stars, as he groped through the blackness toward the front of the school. It was kind of fun being outside the gym doors with the whole fall festival locked inside, like the dream he once had where he was invisible but he could observe everything going on around him. It gave him a weird feeling and made him shiver. The music pounding away inside, mixed with the voices of kids yelling up and down the halls, thrilled at the chance to go unpunished. Monday would bring back hall order and rules. He rounded the corner of the building and saw ahead the open doorway, pouring warm light down the stairs along the concrete walk where he had skinned his knee in the first grade while chasing stupid Teddy Orr. He remembered his first day at Gray Quarry Elementary, a small, scared kid who didn't want to leave his mommy. Now it was his school. He was part of it all. He said, "Roxanne," and was suddenly caught with a sensation of joy, a burst of the life force within that made him laugh out loud and jump in the air. He thrust his arms out to his sides like the blades of a propeller and began to spin round and around the way he used to when he was a tiny kid. Round and round, spinning, buzzing, he felt himself lift off the ground and sail through the air. He was flying. Suddenly he hit thump. It knocked the breath out of him. He blinked. Why was it dark? What was going on? He was flat on his back and all the lights were out. Where was the front of the school? Where were the windows with the orange and black cutout Halloween decorations? Where were Roxanne and Mom, Joey, Mrs. Burke? Dickie bat him, that little jerk. And where was the light? He could still hear the music, but much farther off now. He was scared. He tried to get up, but something glued him to the ground. His fingers clawed into the earth. It felt like soft chocolate, like he had fallen backwards into some colossal birthday cake. A fly, a bug, trapped in a gooey, sugary layer of thick frosting. His pants and shirt became wet, and he struggled to his feet, which were sunk ankle-deep in mud. He extended his arms to balance himself. His hand struck against a hard wall, and he grabbed hold of a jagged rock and the chopped end of what felt like a tree root. All of a sudden it hit him. He was in a hole. A huge hole. Ronnie stumbled back, trying to see up out of the hole, but all he could see was darkness. He tripped over a big pipe and fell backwards again into the mud. Help! Help! No answer came.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of The Eclectic Reader. Please go on to the next numbered episode to continue. Also, check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you'd like to help support the project, you can donate under Madison Mason at Patreon. And please, check out our website, kltkrdr.com, for more information.
Hi, this is Madison Mason. I want to personally thank you for listening to The Eclectic Reader and invite you to share your experience, your thoughts, and your suggestions. We have many great books lined up for the future, but if you have requests for anything that is in the public domain, please email us at kltkrdr@gmail.com.
kltkrdr@gmail.com